Welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor. For those of you that aren't new here, you're probably wondering why I just introduced the show and why you don't hear Josh's voice. Well, to properly explain this, let's go back to before Game 1 of the NBA Finals last week. Legendary broadcaster Mike Breen gets placed in COVID protocols, and the ABC Finals crew is in a pinch with Mark Jackson wondering who's his right-hand man going to be to call the game. Well, lo and behold, they call in Mark Jones, famous Canadian basketball announcer, and in a moment's notice, he's calling Game 1 of the Finals. Well, in this scenario, Josh kind of, sort of, is in COVID protocols, does not have his voice. And I guess in this case, I'm Mark Jackson. And joining me as Mark Jones today is none other than our longest tenured guest and now the co-host of the 1009 podcast, Grayson Hill. Grayson, how are you?
It's good to be back sooner than expected, but happy to pitch in and sub in for Josh for a week.
Yeah, Josh should be honored I called him Mike Breen just now because I've previously been referred to by some listeners as Max Kellerman, and I'm still to this day trying to figure out if that's a compliment or an insult. So, Mike Breen, Mark Jackson, Max Kellerman, we've got all the famous names here. Grayson Hill, too, Trevor Everett, whatever, doesn't matter. We are here to talk Game 1. Unfortunately for Josh, we're here to talk Game 1 and Game 2 of the Finals. We'll kind of go Game 1, Game 2 because of the way the show's structured. Grayson and I had some similar approaches to this where I took a bunch of detailed notes of Game 1 because I think it's really important to understand the way the series looks moving forward with Game 1.
Yep.
I'm going to try to be Reader's Digest on some of the quarters I saw, but and then Game 2 is going to be a lot more of just the storyline, understanding how the series might have shifted, and then we'll go with a couple of questions I've got for both of us as well, and then we'll play a little fun game because unfortunately for those realizing now, we're not doing trivia. The finale is next week, and like he said a little early, he'll be back next week to do trivia, both Josh and Grayson. So this will be a lot of fun. So Game 1, I'm just going to ask up front. I don't have any questions for Game 1. All of my questions are based on once we're done breaking down what we saw.
Okay.
So really just first reactions to Game 1, since I know that was it feels like, I think it was a week ago now, or getting close to it on Thursday. But first reactions to Game 1, just what you saw, what you feel like.
Right. Honestly, it felt like in that third quarter, right before we saw the big pivot in the game, I was like, were we all just this wrong about this Golden State team and this Boston team? I had Boston in 6 prior to the series, understanding that a split in Golden State the first 2 games was essentially a necessity. And watching that game early, especially the first quarter, Steph was 6 threes. It just felt like it was, the pre-KD era almost. It's the Splash Brothers out there. Nothing you can do about it. Everything goes in. And obviously the game turned later, but I was watching with a Celtics fan too, actually, and he was distraught, to put it simply, at the start by Steph, and just feeling like it was inevitable that this game got out of hand and stayed out of hand. But as we saw, it didn't. 40-16 Boston in the fourth was really the story of the whole game, I think. Going back to Boston's previous series, there were a lot of quarters that changed games and it got out of hand in that manner. And for Boston, they were down 12 going into the fourth, so they needed a huge run. And they got it, not from guys you'd expect. Al Horford and Derek White joined up with Jaylen Brown to carry that team down the stretch and steal one in Golden State to open the series.
So a couple things before I piggyback on the point about some guys that stepped up huge. Quarter 1 was it was so eye-opening because it's the quarter I took the most notes on, believe it or not, because I think it was really just, gut reaction of what was happening. But there was multiple times where, and Tatum, obviously, I'll get this out of the way. Like we all know, the first 3 shots he took, 2 of them were right off the right rim, barely hit the rim. The first one was an air ball. So you could tell there was some finals nerves. I think that really does matter for Game 1 on the road. I know it's not Oracle anymore. I don't care. From what I've heard, it's just as electric, maybe minus 5%. With that being said, there was multiple times, and they only did this in the first quarter, and it kind of almost infuriated me watching it. I'm not a fan of either team for those that are not new here. But multiple times they would get a Steph switch where he was guarding Tatum on an attack, the Celtics would. And that was the only time the entire game they did it, was the first quarter. Why they didn't from then on, I don't know. And even without the Steph, like you mentioned the Steph thing, I'm not going to digress on 6 threes, finals record in the first quarter, whatever, right? Tied Michael Jordan's game record a couple of years ago.
Right, only Steph can do that, honestly.
Right. I don't feel like he was even the most impactful thing in that quarter. That's the crazy thing. And people are going to go, well, he hit 21 threes. That sounds ridiculous. No, Kevin Looney and Andrew Wiggins were doing this double cut action play, and every time they did it, they scored. They were literally 6 for 6 on that play. So Wiggins drastically improved what I was talking about, where I was like, hey, like I laid it out with who was on when we did the preview. Was it you? No, it was Caleb.
It
Good.
was
See, I'm,
Caleb.
I'm
Yeah,
getting my
yeah.
weeks mixed up. We're in this stretch run at the end of the year, and the NBA draft is throwing me off. So I laid out the case, where I was like, all right, cool. So what's the X factor? Who's the X factor? And I had the luxury of going last, and I'm like, God, shoot me if I had said this 6 years ago, but like Andrew Wiggins was like the clear, obvious favorite for that. And in quarter one, I felt okay with that so
No,
far.
I would agree. Yeah. I mean, he
It
showed
blew my
up
mind.
big.
And
Absolutely.
after that, it was just like making shots. It wasn't like, okay, cool, he's making shots here and there. It was just he would do the right thing when he needed to. He really isn't making mistakes this series, which I thought was impressive.
Right.
You mentioned the point about guys showing up big. I want to throw this out here because I was going to wait till we review both games, but I'm going to bring this up now so that we can show the difference in the two games even more heavily. So I have a stat here for you. You mentioned Horford and you mentioned White and Brown, right? Those were
Yes.
the three.
Yep. That was a
So
trio.
so the best scoring three for the Celtics in game one, I actually have them. It's take out Brown and insert Derek White. Or, I'm sorry, Marcus Smart. So
Right.
Horford, Smart, and White in game one had 65 points combined, 65% from the field. Rule of threes, 65% from three in game one. Why that's important? We're like, well, obviously we're talking about how well they were. We know that, right? They had a great game. I was going to save this for after game two, but in game two they had 16 points, 26% from the field, and 29% from three.
Right. That was literally the definition of night and day, both from scoring and other contributions. I think ideally you find those three in the middle of those two extremes, but obviously when you get them all hot like that, they did steal a game. But then, yeah, they didn't replicate that in any form or fashion in game two.
I'll save my thoughts on the night and day part of it for when we get to the questions because I think there's a testament to just how the finals games sometimes happen. I think I'm just more so trying to really understand why I won't go too far into game two because I have a couple more thoughts on game one was there's just a lack of I don't want to call it effort because like second spectrum and synergy and all those things actually track effort and the Warriors effort from game one to game two was like a 44% swing, something stupid. I don't believe in the effort stat. I believe in the distance ran that kind of tells you the more easy to consume stat, I guess. But
Yeah, who's being
Tatum's
active out there?
my other takeaway, and this was game whole obviously, but really I noticed in the second quarter was Tatum's passing. Tatum's passing was unbelievable. I'm sure you probably had that same takeaway, but even more so, he just there was multiple plays in the second quarter where it was just like these stupid, like ridiculous wraparound guys, drive kick to Daniel Tice, by the way, hitting threes in the corner. Shot clock late, passes to White. Like I called them shot clock grenades a few weeks ago. I was like, somebody for the Celtics is gonna have to be the shot clock grenade guy. Apparently, it's Derek White because every single time in game one he got a shot clock grenade, he just made it. I
That's
don't
perfect.
really
That's a
know.
perfect name for it. You find like a guy open with 2 seconds up in the shot clock and they put it up. And in game one, at least, they went in a lot.
Well, and normally it's normally like a quote superstar that's supposed to be that guy. And it's like
Right.
the Celtics are like, no, hold my beer, it's Derek White. Like
Yeah.
like I don't understand. This series is confusing from that standpoint because Tatum was their primary playmaker. I pulled up the stat. I don't know why I didn't have it pulled up in my notes, but Jason Tatum created or assisted on 38 points with his passes in Game One of the NBA Finals from Synergy.
Right. And he had
Um,
13 assists in 12 points. And if you'd ask a Boston fan if they steal a game with that stat line from him, they'd probably say no.
well, right, and even more so, what did he have in Game Two? I don't even have it pulled up
He
anymore.
had 28 in game two.
Like, see, this is we'll talk about the differences in the two games at the end because I just have so many thoughts on that. But I'd reached out to Synergy to try to get a stat from Game Two because they unfortunately for some reason did not tweet from their own account after that stat for a couple of days, which was weird. So I reached out to them. I have not heard back yet, but if I get that stat, I'll tweet it out or I'll give them credit on Twitter. So be on the lookout for Synergy's answer to that. I'd be curious to know what his created and assisted number is in Game Two comparison to Game One, but I'm sure it's not 38 is my point, I guess. But
Yeah, I'd have to agree there.
I'm only halfway through like the first and second. I'm only through the first and second quarter of my notes there. The other thing I really took away from at least the first half, I didn't really pay attention to this in the second half, was I thought I did at least. This just shows you how quickly you can like kind of change your opinion and learn from things. Is at first I thought I liked the Wiggins matchup on Jalen Brown, and then Jalen Brown opened up game one with an ungodly, start. So I don't know. Long term, obviously we saw Draymond get switched onto him, and then it was just a game over from basically quarter one. I I don't know.
Yeah. I think the plan in game two worked much better. We'll get to Jalen in game two, but I think that over the course of the game, especially, that plan seemed to have more effect on him offensively. in game two rather than game one. Because I mean, in game one, he was the catalyst for that huge run down the stretch to flip that game essentially on its head and get out with the win.
So I don't have a ton more because obviously, basically, we all saw it was a huge swing, and this is obviously going out way after game one. We're just trying to catch up on this. But anything else from the second half of that game? Because I think there was a couple glaring things. Obviously, the Warriors obviously made that run and made it an attainable game, and it felt like if Steph had hit that three from 15 to make it 18 in the third, I think it was over at that point.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I don't feel like I took away a lot other than maybe like there was a couple times there was I'm trying to figure out the way to word this. There was a couple of plays where Wiggins had basically an ISO advantage on Horford. He scored like six straight buckets on Horford in the third. But is there anything from quarter three and quarter four of game one that you really took away? Obviously, that was when the Celtics made that crazy run.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Simmons described it as a take the lid off the building three from Steph that didn't follow up 15, and you kind of saw things start to click for Boston in the wake of that. I had some notes just on the run itself. The Celtics on 7 possessions across 3 minutes put up 20 points, hit 5 threes. Only shot they missed was a Looney block. In the fourth as a whole, we said Boston had 40 points. 27 of those 40 were from that trio I mentioned earlier in Brown, White, and Horford. 10 from Brown himself. So, you think it's got to be Tatum, it's got to be big. They found ways to win without him scoring. We said, created or assisted 38 points himself, 13 assists. So we kind of realized, it's not my night scoring. He, as great players do, found another way to help the team win. So yeah, just that stretch from Boston, the 20 points in 3 minutes. If you had asked me what team does that in this series in that building, I would have said Golden State immediately. And I don't think I would have thought about it for a second. But it was very interesting to see a Warriors type run happen against them in their own building, especially in a game that's pivotal opening the finals.
Yeah, all great stuff there. I On the flip side of it, they also held the Warriors for almost 5.5 minutes scoreless in the second half of the fourth quarter. So basically, when
Right.
they needed to get back, they couldn't. And I'm trying to give enough credit where credit's due. I think it's an Udoka adjustment thing, but I also think it's just a fell flat on their face, couldn't make a shot thing. I don't think they really did a lot. He made a lot of great adjustments when Steph had 21 in the first and then zero in the second. I'm not
Right.
sure there was enough. I didn't see anything that stood out for me where I'm like, that's what they did. I just I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think the difference in the fourth quarter, especially, was, and they didn't have Smart in there. I don't think Smart's fully healthy. I'm not like aggregating anything. I don't know anything. I just don't think Smart's like fully there, and I think that's pretty obvious. But
Yeah. White.
he didn't take dumb shots. Like he just didn't take
No, he
dumb
really
shots
didn't.
in the fourth quarter of game one. Now game two is a little bit different story, but he made great passes when they needed him to play make, and that's I mean, game one really pretty much went exactly how we thought it was. If, like you said, they were going to split the series, I think there was no chance they were winning a game two, regardless of outcome of game one. I just don't think the Warriors are going to lose game twos at home like that in the finals. It was going to have to be
Right.
game one.
One note on the late and that issue Golden State had scoring to claw back is Andre Iguodala played the first half of the fourth quarter, and I don't quite get why that happened. He was essentially a non-factor on offense. They didn't have him and Looney on the floor in the same time in the fourth. They tried it earlier, did not work. That's two guys on the floor you're just begging to shoot, essentially, especially guys like Steph, Poole, and Clay on the floor. That can hurt you much worse than either of those two. So they flipped it halfway through the fourth quarter. Looney came in and Iguodala left. But I think at that point, the tide had already turned to a point where it was difficult for them to just flip that Warriors switch and escape with the win.
Yeah, that's I don't know. I've seen the Iguodala thing, and I'm trying to like figure out how I want to word this because I didn't have any notes on it. I've seen the Iguodala conversation this week, and I think Kerr just he had the opportunity to play him. If that was the game you're going to play him, I don't think we see him the rest of the series. I think it's an easier
No.
two shot, and I think it's just they had a testament of not having Gary. It's a testament of them not having Gary Payton because as we see now, we'll talk about him in a little bit. I have a piece related to one of the questions I have. I I don't know. It just you could kind of tell that he just wasn't meant to be out there in the fourth, and I just don't understand why they didn't make that switch. Obviously, you don't want to play Poole, especially against the Celtics when they went big. You don't want to play Poole, Steph, and Clay together, and then play
Right.
Looney there somewhere. Whoever your fourth guy is, who cares? Draymond there probably, obviously, but the biggest swing, just summarizing everything we've said, was the Celtics got outscored in the third, 38-24, and then they outscored the Warriors 40-16 in the fourth. So, and it's a testament to all the things we previously mentioned. So, I don't have anything else on game one. I enjoyed watching it because even though I took detailed notes, I still feel like I took the most away from game one. Game two was more of I really it took me a lot longer to do some notes on game two, and obviously a shorter amount of time. So where are we with game two? Are we ready to talk about the biggest swing in this series going from game one to game two?
Yeah, I mean, we saw Jaylen Brown come out for game two. He had 9 early in the first quarter, and it was like, here we go again. But he finished with 17, so kind of Steph-like in that he opened the game, hitting almost everything, and then he tailed off from there. And part of that was, again, the adjustment by Steve Kerr to put Draymond on him. He did pick up 2 early fouls, which, not to put on a tinfoil hat, that second one came right when you were like, yeah, is it a Boston night again? They had a couple possession lead early in the first quarter, and they kind of got reeled back in. Grant Williams picked up a second in that time frame as well. But yeah, 13 of his 17 in the first quarter, 9 in the first 2.5 minutes, and then that was all we got from him offensively. Like we said, Tatum bounced back, 28 with 6 threes, but it wasn't enough. The same avalanche we saw in game one, we saw in game two from Golden State, and then some. They put the game out of reach pretty quickly after like another half within 2 points, which was good to see with all the blowouts we've had in the postseason. But that was my initial thoughts. What do you have?
No, I'm going to embrace the tinfoil hat thing for a second because I think you're right. I think there's a lot of things I took away, and this is I made this comment off recording earlier to Josh while he was here with us before he walked away, and I just maybe it's watching these games and having to really understand them on a deeper level than just watching them as a fan and enjoying good basketball. Maybe that is it, but I don't want to be too tinfoil hatty, but I'm gonna. I heard a great point from Trey Kirby from No Dunks of the Athletic earlier today, and I had to share it. I think Draymond Green might have gotten his first tech on purpose because he knows his leash is a lot longer when he has a second tech in a finals game
I
or one
mean,
tech in a
why
finals game.
why would he not? I mean, Steve Javie said it live on television as part of that broadcast. That we think about that, it's in the back of our head, and we're not going to throw him out in this spot in this game. And I mean, he's in the past seen what happens if it doesn't go his way. He got suspended for a finals game, as we all remember.
Yeah, game five, famously.
Right, and it was thought that he should have been tossed and suspended sooner, as we saw the other night as well. I think it's if he's got it in his head, they're not going to throw me out in a home playoff game, early on in the third quarter when the Brown thing happened. I mean, why would you not? If they're going to just give you at least one that we've seen to this point, Mulligan on a double tech with that one already on you, I don't see why he wouldn't. I mean, it worked with respect to Brown. We saw him offensively disappear after that first quarter, especially. I mean, the first couple minutes of that first quarter. So if that's what it took them to win and it worked and he's not getting tossed, I don't see why he doesn't do it every game the rest of the series.
Yeah, he'll start playing with fire, and eventually you do get burnt. And obviously, he's famously been burnt before, and obviously, him going out in Game Five in 2016 changed the shape of NBA history. But I, he just, and it's not like I said. I mentioned this energy thing where it's the up and down, the 44% more, effort per se from Warriors from game one to game two. I think Draymond Green had 140% turnaround in effort from game one to game two. Not that
Oh,
he
I
didn't
believe it. He
play.
was extremely active. Yeah.
It was just one of those things. He was like, I'm going to make a stamp on this game in some form or fashion, whether that's me. And if him getting kicked out might have been a bad thing, but really it might have also been a good thing. I don't know at this point without knowing because he didn't get kicked out. In terms of takeaways, I want to transition to Boston for a second because the Draymond Green thing is just, I love him just as much as anybody else does in terms of defensive impact and energy and all that stuff. Sometimes he can be nauseating. Talk about the finals. However, on the other side, on Boston's side, I took away very quickly two things. They can't play Horford and Williams together the rest of the series if the Warriors are playing their best lineup, and we'll talk about best lineup in a minute. Spoiler for the questions. I thought the Horford Williams coming into the series, and this is where you just you what take your own medicine or you eat your own words, and you learn from this in the podcasting world or in the media world. Is I thought the Horford Williams lineup together was going to be great. I thought it was going to be the best possible counter to any Looney lineup, and it wasn't at all. And obviously that's partly in problem to Robert Williams being hurt.
I mean, yeah, just to that note, over the 2 games, Boston's +1 on the glass, which you don't expect. That's a team that you would assume wins the battle in the paint and the glass. They got killed in the paint in game two, but obviously it's a little bit distorted because of how out of hand it got. It's essentially a 3-quarter game for all intents and purposes. But Yeah, you would think with a lineup like that, you control the paint. You don't give the Warriors those kick out offensive boards that turn into Stephen Clay threes that we saw at points in both games. But it just hasn't happened like that. I don't know if that's a testament to Robert Williams not being fully healthy. We only saw him 14 minutes in game two, and he was one of the first to get pulled right when you kind of thought, all right, pack it up and head to Boston 1-1. And so, I mean, between him and Smart, a couple other guys for Boston, they really were not shy about pulling that trigger. And I wouldn't say punting because they did keep it competitive in the fourth quarter, but they had no intention of trying to mount another massive comeback just because of the energy it would take and the games we have in the future.
So sometimes, and why I brought up there was 2 points here. I'm going to tie the two or three things I have for these together. So I'm glad we addressed the Robert Williams thing. I brought up the Horford piece of that, obviously, as a lineup together. The next thing I want to tie together to, and these are just going to domino themselves until we get done to go to the questions, but at least from my end, Horford didn't take a single shot in game two until the third quarter. So if you're
Right.
going to not be able to play Horford and Williams together, then one of them, whether one of them will play more or not, as you said, Williams obviously only played 15, 14 minutes, but Horford has to be more aggressive. And obviously the Warriors contested. I saw it and I didn't write it down. It was something stupid like 80% more shots or something from game one to game two. Obviously, he's going to make more in game one like that. But you can't have Hal Horford, who was your most important offensive player in game one, taking no shots until the third quarter. And it was halfway through the third quarter at that.
Right.
On top of that, though, the Celtics also didn't help themselves. You and I both know this. I don't have to probably repeat this, but they were 35% from the field in this game.
I got that written down too. That can't happen. It
can't
can't.
happen. And
At
like
any point
that's
in the playoffs, I don't care who you're playing. You get in that best 16 teams in the league, you're not winning on the road shooting 35%. It just doesn't happen.
that's what's crazy is they're 8-3 on the road.
Yeah,
just
they're one off the
ridiculous.
record. Yeah, and that was
Yeah,
Golden State's first home playoff loss. They were looking at potentially running the table at home with the postseason.
which is nuts. And they're 5-4 in Boston, so I really I'm gonna have to just lose sleep the next day or two trying to figure out my thoughts on Game Three before it even happens. But they were also on pace. Not just to finish the point on the 35% thing. I'm glad we both had that down. But at one point, they were on pace to shoot the worst 2 point percentage. They shot 25% from twos through I think most of the fourth. They ended up finishing with like 29%. They were 3% off finishing the worst 2 point percentage in playoff history, not just finals history. So it's just look. Not to spoil my questions, but it's just a testament to game one and game two. Like it's
Right.
just the difference in and guys don't make shots, guys don't defend shots. Or in this case, the Warriors defending shots really, really well. The Celtics aren't making them because the Warriors didn't have a stout offensive game. They only scored one more point or one less point than they did in game one, and they won by well, 20 almost. So
Yeah.
the part that I kind of summarize, and if you have anything else before I move on, stop me. But where I want to kind of come together with game one and game two is understanding that glaringly the Warriors won the third quarter 73-38. They're a third quarter team. We've known that since Steph was basically Steph, since he won his first MVP. I guess the question that's not really a question I have written down is like what has to change in the third quarter because the Celtics can't win this series if the third quarter keeps going like this. They really can't.
No,
I hate to
absolutely not.
say that might seem drastic, but I don't think that's drastic. So
Oh,
I
I don't
guess
think so either. No, you can't lose. I mean, we saw in the Miami series, they get outplayed for quarters, and they play three good quarters and lose one bad, and they would get blown out. And Golden State's better than Miami, so if you want to play with fire like that, I don't see it working out at all. Whether it's in Boston and Golden State, either place. I'd have written down 19 turnovers. They lost the points in the paint by 16. Neither one of those things can happen against a Golden State team, just because of their lack of size, and you take advantage of that. And if you're giving them extra possessions, odds are they're gonna score points off of them, and it's hard enough to beat them when you do take care of the ball, as we saw in game one. I don't know how many turnovers they had in game one, but it wasn't 19, I don't believe. But just things you can't do in games against this team happened, and they kind of snowballed. Just real quick, when the wheels fell off, kind of like I mentioned in game one, there was a Tatum three to cut it to 6 with about 4.5 minutes left in the third, and you kind of got that here we go feeling again. Golden State scored the next 11, and that kind of it was like, all right, never mind. It was Golden State by 17. Tatum split 4 free throws, and then Golden State got the last 6 of the third quarter, and they were up 23 headed to the fourth. My last note was drive home safely. It's my last note for game two, because at that point it was like 12 points is one thing. 23 points after 12 points is another thing. It's just not going to happen. And we saw the white flag from Boston pretty early in that fourth quarter.
yeah, and look, it's a testament I hate saying it's a testament because a lot of things is how I'm tying this together, is how I'm wording that. But it's to my point I made a few weeks ago about when you're like playing Golden State and you're down or you're up by 8, you're actually up by 3 or whatever that formula. Like I said, I feel so bad I can't remember who and I couldn't find the tweet. I tried to, maybe it got pulled down, but there was a formula. Long story short, if you're not, if you've never heard it before, not you, but listeners in general, is if you're actually, there's a formula that someone made and it was really good. I just, how I remembered it was basically if you're down by or up by 12 on Golden State, you're actually only up by 5 because of the way it swings and how many points per possession they scored in games this year. And it was specifically based on
Right.
this year. But in general, that's just the history of them. That this third quarter is a sign of that, right? I'm going to go ahead and ask this question because this is a poor question of mine, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding the series maybe a little bit, but
All
better.
right.
But this is the only crappy quote unquote crappy question. I actually wrote down two of them as we were talking because I'm going to learn things, but there's two big ones that I want to go over, and then two
Okay.
more that I'll tie together. So the one that I can't grasp my head around is, and I'm trying to think of other finals, maybe comparing these to them. But is this just one of those series where each game's going to be relatively good for most of the game and have each game's going to have a different feel, or is this just, or is there some other way I need to be looking at this? Because I really, my takeaway, and I want to see, and this is why I think this question will take long, as you may agree with me. I think it's just going to be one of those series where each game has a different storyline. Each game has a different. It's not just this glaring like, okay, that's Golden State and that's what they're doing and that's what's happening. Each game has something different where I'm having to really think. Is that like, am I wrong to think that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general that's going to hold true. I mean, we saw in game one it could be anybody on any given night, and Al Horford putting up almost 30. Guys like Derek White, Jordan Poole off the bench, respectively, for both teams can, it could be their podium game that night. And with how good these two teams are, it's probably going to be enough to push that team over the edge and get the W that night. So I think, I'm hoping we see games similar to more so game one, and that it's entertaining throughout. We've had 2 point games at half times, both games, which is refreshing. We had some just quarter and a half and that's it games in the conference finals. And so, for a final series between two teams this good, it's good to see they are hanging pretty close. We've had about 7 quarters of, impactful basketball. The fourth quarter of game two was pretty much mailed in, but it's been, I've enjoyed it from an outside perspective as an OKC fan. I'm obviously rooting a little bit for Al Horford in his half season with the Thunder. But yeah, back to your question, I think we do see hopefully some storylines start to develop, and guys that I mentioned, White, Poole, those kind of unsung guys, X Factors and Wiggins, start to really put their stamp on the series.
All right, so I'm actually going to add a question. These questions won't take long, I promise. I'm going to add a
That's
question.
fine.
So I forgot that you told me this before we recorded. This is your official like elevator pitch of what, and I'll ask it as a question since we're on the questions part of the segment. What does Al Horford need to do to win Finals MVP?
If he can keep the 6 of 8 from three thing going, I think there's a compelling case, especially if we see Tatum uneven. I mean, honestly, I don't think I'd bet it after game one if I had to. It'd be hilarious. And that, Steph Curry in his Hall of Fame career is in finals that Andre Iguodala and Al Horford won finals MVP. I think that would be one of the better footnotes in finals history. Maybe not for Warriors fans. But I mean, I think game two ended any Cinderella story with that respect. But if he can replicate game one in any fashion repeatedly over these next, we're guaranteed at least 2 more games in the series. I
Yeah,
think there's going to be some push for it.
he'll join the likes of Cedric Maxwell and let's see anybody else that's weird that won Finals MVP. Dennis Johnson for
I
the
think we're
Supersonics.
due for
Yeah.
one. There's been too many stars. We need another Iguodala year.
Well, I don't know if we're due for one. It happened a few years ago, and I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. I think it should go to the guy that absolutely deserves it. That's beside the
I
point.
would agree.
We'll be here for 3 hours if I go down that rabbit hole. So, next question is Grant Williams unplayable?
Something's got to change. If he can have a big bounce back night, like we kind of saw from Wiggins in game one after an uneven conference finals, maybe I wouldn't call him unplayable yet. I think he's talented enough to overcome the issues he's had. I will say getting form tackled by Draymond Green and picking up a foul is a little bit beyond his control. I know the Rams are throwing some money around, but I think they're out of money, Draymond, so maybe stop doing that. I think he's also a young guy, and they don't always, when we saw Jason Tatum airballing his first shot finals. So I think that could be some extended effects of just, holy crap, I'm in the finals in year, I believe, two, maybe three. Not a spot he's used to. And he is a role player, but he does play a key role for the Celtics team. So I'm going to hold off on unplayable yet. But I think if we see a game three with similar performance to the first two games, then we may not see him as much anymore.
Well, so first of all, that's very responsible of you to say not yet. However, I don't even have his box score from game one in front of me, but I do know that in obviously game two, that tackle and all that, I get it. Like, that was a terrible call. That's probably one of the things that shouldn't have happened the most. But he can also control the 5 points and 1 rebounds thing in a contributing game.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
I'll just answer it, and then I'll move on to the question that correlates to it. I think as of right now he is, and the reason I say that is I want to know now. Talk this out loud here, which is why I wanted to leave plenty of time for these questions. This is the one we're going to spend the most time on. What is the best crunch time or best lineup for the Celtics, and what's the best one for the Warriors? We can start with the Celtics since we're talking about Grant Williams.
I can't get those Derek White minutes in game one out of my head. I think.
Let's try to agree on one, because it's harder to
Okay.
do like the Ryan Russillo, Bill Simmons thing where you go
Right.
back and forth and do it. Let's try to agree on one. I agree with you. In crunch time, and obviously you can say best lineup, playing them in the second quarter, whatever. I want, and I've always made this point, is like, I don't care what the first whatever minutes is. I want to know in 6 minutes or less what best possible lineup I'm going to get, endurance wise, performance wise, defensive wise, whatever. So I agree with you. Derek White's got to be in it in some form or fashion. I'm writing them down as we go. So
I mean, I remember the Celtics fan I was watching game one with was genuinely surprised. He's like, at one point, where is Marcus Smart? And we kind of looked at the score and looked at the court, and we're like, I mean, White's in there, and they're winning this game right now. And is he going to come back? And he did eventually. But so yeah, just for that alone and the effect he had in that first game, you have to have him in there.
So I have White as well, and then so here's what I had. Let's just do it this way. Here's what I had, and I want to see if you disagree. And I think this is probably right. I
Okay.
had White, Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford. I think you get everything you need.
That's pretty well rounded. That would be, yeah.
I think healthy.
That's the
Healthy
other thing
though.
too. Yeah.
Healthy. If all right. So let's say the Robert Williams. Here's the only flip would be if Robert Williams is there. Are you taking White or Smart out? You have to take White out, right? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's tough because we've seen it work with White, but I think, you know,
We
not that
would
that was
hope
a
that
one off, but I think we've got more to the good with Smart in these situations when he's not taking ill-advised shots like we saw against Miami. But yeah, I think you would have to take out White if you do have 100% of Rob Williams, who's absolutely going to be on the floor as well.
So I was prepared for this one to take less time than the Warriors one. So I think we can agree. I think right now, based on what we know with Williams' health, I think it's White, Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford, right?
Yep, I would
All
agree.
right. The other side is where it kind of gets funky because of what we know. Because we know a lot right now. And I'll tie all these questions together in just a second. But the agreeing part's going to be tough because I probably think we're going to disagree. I'm going to go ahead and pencil in Steph and we can go from there. So Steph's in the crunch time lineup. Okay,
Right.
let me go ahead and pencil in Draymond because I'd be an idiot if not. So penciling in Steph and Green, I have Green at like 3 or 4. It doesn't matter here. It's positionless basketball.
Right.
This is where it gets weird. Where do we go now? Like, what is this 2, 3, and 5?
I'll tell you where we don't go is Andre Iguodala.
Okay, so Iggy's out. We got that.
That's
Okay,
yeah.
okay, got it. This is tough. See, this is where
Yeah, I'm starting to.
are you playing Looney? I don't know. That's the issue
I
because
think
they're
you
playing
have.
Horford, right? They're playing Horford.
I think you have to just with respect to that Steph or Clay three kicks off the glass, he gets it, turns, kicks, and they get that second chance pop three
Which,
that
by
we've
the way,
seen.
they did a ton in game one. Like that
Oh,
happened a
absolutely.
ton in game one, and when it almost mattered the most, and it was very nauseating to watch if I'm a Celtics fan.
Yeah, no, I mean I think for that effect alone, you're given the best shooter of all time and his companion out at the 3 point line just extra shots. So I think that's especially in a closing lineup, you want as many, you want to just milk the clock and get as many shots as you can, and they're going to take quality shots out there most of the time as well. So I think just for that alone, and it's demoralizing too if you give up a board to the only guy with that size in Golden State. He turns around and there's Steph wide open or even contested. That sometimes it doesn't even matter. You have a hand in his face, it's going to go in. So I think just fueling that as much as you can, you have to have Looney in there.
This is where I struggle because we I think we were going to agree. I think Looney. Some people are going to have Green at the small ball five, and then they play a heavy switch line. Here's where I struggle. So we got the Looney. I agree. I think Looney has to be in there in crunch time. I don't think that's a debate, and it shouldn't be. I'm going to throw a couple things out there that you may not know. So Porter's on a minutes restriction. I didn't know that until yesterday.
I didn't either.
So
That's news to
so
me.
so Porter's on a minutes restriction. So we're going to assume that Otto Porter's not in there, even though he
He's
might
been
should
pretty
be.
effective. Yeah.
In 6 minutes, do you save him? Like, do you risk him getting cold for 3.5 quarters and then you play him? I just
Yeah.
can't.
I
I
don't.
just
No.
can't.
No.
Right. So I'm going to rule out Porter.
Okay.
The other X factor, or the other X factor in this scenario that I'm trying to figure out is Gary Payton. Yeah, that three he hit in game two was basically like the thing that kind of woke him up. Defensively, he's unbelievable, obviously, and then I I don't know if his elbow's fully healthy. I think I'm struggling to figure that out. So how do we finish this lineup? Was how I was going to word that. It's like knowing the Porter thing and knowing that Gary Payton might not be ready. I think he might be like 85, 90% enough to play in a finals game and use adrenaline to get him through it.
I
It's
would
got to be
take
Clay, right?
90% of him if I'm honest, just because of the
Okay.
defense alone. I mean, he's not the first, second, probably even third option on offense in any given set. But I think defensively alone, I think he's shown enough. I think it's tough to gauge his health because we haven't seen him in so long. I mean, he missed in excess of a month, but I think just effort alone, the execution he's capable of. If we get 90% of him, I would want him out there just for defense, honestly.
So then process of elimination, it's Clay, right?
Yeah, I can't. I mean, it's hard to imagine any Warriors lineup in any pivotal situation without him. I think it's been a rough go of it. He had
100%.
yeah, 419 shooting in game two, chipped in 11 points. Not himself. He's shown flashes of it, and I think you have to put him in there and hope that those flashes pop up in that time frame, that last 6 minutes.
And that's why I wanted to do this exercise. This whole thing was to understand what best lineup we were seeing. Because by the way, those two lineups, the Celtics played that lineup. The Warriors did not. They played Iguodala in game one, and then didn't have to worry about playing anybody really in game two. They didn't play Peyton most of the fourth, as well as Clay. They just left in, even though they were
Right.
up
And
by
Iggy was
20.
actually out in game two with knee inflammation, allegedly. Yeah.
Right. So exactly. So they're not. We had to make sure he was not in that equation. So we know the lineups, at least what we think are the lineups. The problem I'm having, and this is how I answer the question that's correlated to it. Can the Warriors win this series if Clay continues to just have these games? Like, can they? Like, is this possible? Are the Celtics going to win the series if Clay continues to play this poorly for the rest of the series?
I mean, if the shooting from game two carries over, especially into Boston, I know Boston's been pretty uneven there, as good as they've been on the road. I just don't. I don't think Poole does enough, certainly, to offset that loss of explosiveness, the threes, everything else. I would struggle to have them win the series, especially knowing Boston now has home court, which again, that's been hit or miss for them. But TD Garden's going to be very prepared for these Warriors come tomorrow night. So I think Clay is going to have a Clay game, and it may very well be game six, which I have personal experience with, unfortunately. But they may be in a closeout by game six. It would be a necessity, not a luxury at that point. And so I think he's obviously earned enough over his career to have as many minutes as he wants. You may alter some rotations if he's warming up or maybe not, but he's going to have to figure it out because I think we've seen some pretty good quarters from Steph. I'd say five, Steph quarters to put it like that. Game one, he struggled after that first quarter, but I mean, 21 in the first, you can have a little bit of cooling off, but I, I would struggle, especially the Warriors. I'd be more concerned as a Warriors fan, just what's it going to take to get him going? Because I agree with you. If Clay's putting up 11 points a night, I don't see them winning the series.
Yeah. So, and the whole point I wanted to ask it was I almost wanted to take him out of the lineup, but then I went, well, who the heck are we putting in there? Like,
Right,
if we
I
know
struggled with that too.
if we know the Porter thing, if we know the Iggy thing, if we know at that point you have
Yeah,
to play him, right?
and
So
Porter's been great. I mean, he was knocking down key threes in game one. I don't have his box score in game two in front of me, but I do remember a couple times he was hitting shots as well. Which that's not over 6 minute stretches though. Is the big point with this exercise, and that closing lineup where these are the five guys and we're rolling with it and we need this game. I think you still have to put Clay in that lineup, even what we've seen through two games.
it just showed the glaring gap that ultimately this isn't the same deep Warriors team we've seen in the past. Because even when they had like KD, they had like Sean Livingston and they had Iggy and they had guys I'm forgetting right this moment, but you know what I'm talking about. Whatever.
Right. There were shooters on the bench to be had.
The other point with that is the Clay shooting thing. Like I agree, I brought it up because I thought that I just don't know if they could win the series if he shoots. Let's just say he averages 11 the rest of the series. Like that's what he's averaging
Right.
right now, pretty much. My problem is the he did a great job when they switched. It was a testament to Draymond playing better defense on Brown. Like I said earlier, they put Draymond on Brown, and then Clay's job was to follow around. Oh my gosh, who was it? Horford, and that's why
Right.
Horford didn't shoot very well.
Mhm.
He's not defending Horford by any means. Horford's not a dribbler. He's not a playmaker. He's not a ball stop.
No.
Clay's job was to just literally just follow him. And I guess right now, like the two things, if Clay's not dribbling, and because he absolutely can, he tried to in game one to try to get himself going. He actually
Right.
tried to
Yeah.
go on ball, and it just didn't work at all. And he just needs to. I think he needs to average like less than 30 dribbles a season for the rest of his career at this point. And that's not a joke. I really wish it was, but I just don't know if 11 points and following Horford around, because if Williams gets healthy in game 5 and 6, like Horford comes out, what is Clay going to do on Robert Williams? At that point, it's just a confusing finals. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just thought Clay shooting poorly is just not going to happen, and eventually something's going to happen. Yeah, it very well may be game 6. I hope that maybe it doesn't get to that point. We'll see. But
Right. I mean, I think the hope in Golden State is that Clay offensively shows up before Robert Williams does from a health perspective. And then, you know, if he is back shooting anywhere close to what we've seen as peak Clay, then that becomes a no-brainer that he's on the floor.
is Udoka being outcoached by Steve Kerr?
I think giving him the respect he deserves as a first-year head coach, I think we can give a little bit of leniency, but I mean, just the drastic shift we saw from game 1 to game 2, I think the adjustment battle is being won by Kerr at this moment. Now, if we see a game 3 where Boston comes out, that home crowd's electric, and they just blow the doors off Golden State, then this changes the conversation as it did from game 1 to game 2. But I would say right now, Kerr dropped game 1. I hate the term must win this early in a series, but you go down 2 on the finals, headed back on the road, things aren't looking good. So I'll give Kerr credit. He did make the adjustments they needed, especially on Jaylen Brown. He pretty much produced a disappearing act we saw from Steph offensively in game 1 with Brown in game 2. And Tatum bounce back wasn't enough. They pretty much said, Tatum's got to beat us by himself, and he couldn't do it. So, yeah, I'd have to go Kerr to this point.
The whole reason I asked this question was because I wanted to make sure people realize that the answer right now is yes, even though, and it's not like this. You made the case where it's not this insurmountable gap. However, Udoka all year has been really good with adjustments. Like that has been for a first year coach. That's something with a team you've never played with before. A team, by the way, that had a losing record through December 26th this year. Like all the things were going wrong. If someone had told you on December 27th the Celtics would be 1-1 in the finals, like nobody would. Like I would have put a
Right.
million
They were a
dollars on.
500 team at Christmas time, and then they win to Golden State and still game 1 in the finals just months later. So
I would have put $1 million on Boston to make the finals if someone had told me that on December 27th with confidence. And I'm not going to. I wasn't going to anyway. But the point I'm making is, ever since that point, Ime's been unbelievable adjustment wise. I think that's one of his biggest testaments as a coach, or one of his biggest strengths. I'm going to stop saying that word. One of his biggest strengths as a head coach, and he's just going to have this unbelievable future. He's doing exactly what I thought Willie Green was going to be able to do in New Orleans. And this is not to get down the rabbit hole, but my point was, and the reason I ask these questions is part of the reason I ask questions that I think are good is if they're points I have to make, and I want to find a way to see if I feel right about them or wrong about them. I think he's got an unbelievable adjustment of some kind up his sleeve with understanding what he's got with Robert Williams. I think that's going to be his biggest thought process here. So my point is I think right now Steve Kerr is out coaching him, but I think it's just a matter of he just has to figure out what to do with Robert Williams. And I think something's going to happen in game 3 or 4. Maybe it's in a closeout game in game 5 or 6. You never know. But I think Udoka's got something up his sleeve, and I don't know what it is just yet. So I'm hopeful that he can, because he's going to have to be the better quote coach. I feel like we're,
absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like we're first take talking now, but he's going to have to do something in game 4 or 5 as an adjustment that I think is going to be the difference maker in this series. So
Yeah, I mean, and obviously with a healthy Williams, those wrinkles get a lot easier to add into a game plan. But again, there's extra rest in these finals, but I don't know if that's an extra day is going to help Williams all that much. We'll see. Again, we're recording on Tuesday night, so we're about 25 hours out from game three. So I saw him limping at points in game two, and I was like, I don't know why he's still in the game. And then obviously that big Golden State run immediately followed that, and we did not see him late in the game, which I think is smart. There's no reason him and Marcus Smart. If the game is at that point, again, it's game two of the 7-game series or best of 7 series. Your best interest is to get those guys as much rehab as you can.
Yeah, and regardless of how, I mean, to summarize and to close before we go to the next segment is ultimately I'm a proponent of if you can get it to, especially in hockey this year. I watched a lot more hockey this year. I'm going to make this stupid hockey analogy, but when you can get it to be 1-1, like it's really anybody's series. So that's a big point in hockey and baseball. But in basketball, I don't necessarily believe it as much because game one and game two, depending on how they went, I can kind of be like, well, it's obviously this guy's series right now, but really, I think this is just wide open, and that's just not a bold take. It's just the fact that that's how big of a difference there was between game one and game two. So,
Yeah, it's anybody's series to say the least.
we're going to work on now a game that I've been wanting to do maybe this offseason a little bit. I know this game has kind of died down a little bit, but we're going to go, and since unfortunately I'm just going to spoil this for those that aren't new here who absolutely love this segment. Unfortunately, you'll see in the title by now. You also realize as soon as I started talking at the beginning of the episode that Josh is not here. So you're probably thinking, well, the trivia finale is sometime in the next couple of weeks. You guys are probably confused on when the heck that is. It's going to be next week. So, like I said earlier, I think I might have said this. I don't remember if it was before or after we started, but Grayson will be back immediately following this next week to do the trivia finale that he's had all year to prepare. No pressure, but it's kind of hard to do trivia without Josh. So,
Yeah, that's pretty
uh,
important.
I feel like it wouldn't be as fun to sit here and just like me throw a trivia question at you as if it was Josh, and it just didn't make sense. So, neither of us have played NBA Pirtle today. There's no way for you guys to verify that that is true. For what it's worth, Josh got it in 4 and did not tell us anything right before we started, before he walked away. So, with that being said, instead of going and quizzing each other on it, we're going to try to figure this out as fast as humanly possible in hopes that this will suffice the download discrepancy with trivia being gone. Totally kidding. Please, 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 if you've made it this far, subscribe. Guess number one, we kind of actually talked about this before, and it's helped me. The last couple of weeks, I have done PJ Washington with all the funny stuff with Charlotte and the memes on Twitter. I'm not going to digress. We're not going to talk about it. You can go look it up yourselves. But PJ Washington's been an unbelievable guess, and you guys can steal this. I got it on 3 days in a row last week because I guessed PJ Washington. Talking it out loud, I'm going to go ahead and type in PJ Washington, and him and I are going to do the same thing. Before we react to that, the reason I do that is because the Southeast, for some reason in the East, has like went on this stretch where it was just picked an unbelievable amount. The Southeast and the Atlantic were for a while just unbelievably picked in the East. Regardless, you get a division. It's kind of a guess anyway. So he's a forward who's 6'7", so he's a short forward. So you know based on the height, if it says a yellow forward, he's either going to be forward center, and based on the height, you can figure it out, right? Just talking this out loud for a second. And then age, he's a little older than people realize because he came out of college, I believe, as like a sophomore or a junior, but he's 23. And then his number is I say kind of in the middle. 25 is a little high for the NBA, but you can at least kind of figure out from there to go down or go up, right? So now I'll go ahead and let you react to what we just saw. But we just guessed PJ Washington on guess number one. We're also recording this on Tuesday, June 7th, so you'll know the result by the time you hear this.
How'd we do? I see. Got the conference, and he's younger than 23. So we got a little bit to go off of here.
Yep. So we basically know it's not in the Southeast, which is great. So that kind of just completely gets us out of the southern part of the Eastern Conference. That's great. I can eliminate in my head a bunch of those teams. This is how I do it. I visualize the Southeastern map and then go from there. We know he's not so forwards gray. It's just hard on a visual or non-visual podcast, but forwards gray. Height. Here's the key, and this is why I do PJ Washington. He's not
Smart,
a forward at all, and he's 6'7", but obviously with the gray means he's at least 6. He has to be 6'4" or shorter. The guy.
Right.
And then they are 22 or 21 because age is yellow. So talking out loud here, where are we going guess-wise? Because we know it's in the Northeast. So immediately I'm trying to eliminate teams. So Emmanuel Quickly's been picked before, so we can eliminate guys because I think there's so many NBA players I don't think they're going to repeat this early.
Yeah, repeats are
in
tough.
the cycle.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think they've ever done it to my knowledge, and I think you can track that on PirtleTracker.com. I think is literally what it's called. But Quickly's out, right? So we can eliminate the Knicks. Anything else we know, we can eliminate. because the goal is to get this as fast as possible. I'd like to get it in two. Would be kind of
You got
nice,
to beat
but
Josh. I mean, yeah.
yeah, right. So quickly, the Knicks, that's out. Anybody else in the? And let's start with the Atlantic. Anybody else in the Atlantic that you know of or that we're eliminating?
Try to just think guards up in that part of the league here.
Because
Let's
Brooklyn,
see.
Kyrie's out, but
Right.
Cam Thomas maybe because he was a little older. We can't rule out Brooklyn. I feel like Brooklyn's
I
still
think he's
there.
stuck in college. Stuck around at LSU for a little bit.
He
Yeah.
did, and he's kind of short. And his jersey number. What is his jersey number though? See, I don't know because 25s. That's the only tough part about PJ. I think Cam Thomas is not a bad. I think he might be a high jersey number though. That's the part that's killing me. I feel like I
I,
can
I
see a high
want to
jersey
say
number in
he
my
is.
head.
I just don't. I
Oh
couldn't tell
crap.
you what
Okay.
it is.
All right. So I feel like the Knicks. I'm not going to fully rule out, and also yeah, actually, I think we do need to rule out the Knicks because their guards are all of their guards that haven't been used already are older. So R.J. Barrett's been picked already. Quickly's been picked already, and then Derrick Rose and all the other guys, Alec Burks, are all
Right.
older.
They're all well older
So
than 23.
New York's out. Got it. Great. The
Yep.
Nets, we have Cam Thomas is a possibility.
Hmm.
So Toronto. Oh my. Am I forgetting any guard other than Fred VanVleet? This is bad. This is why I want to do this together.
It's Scotty Barnes, but he's taller, I believe.
Yeah, he is. He's 6'8", 6'9" ish, and
Yeah.
he's I think even younger than this guy. So okay, so then are we just absolutely forgetting Malachi Flynn? Is he? Oh
I'd be.
gosh, I think he's older. He's got to be.
I think
Let's just
he's
assume he's older.
24 at least. Yeah.
Yeah. So Toronto, let's tentatively rule out
Okay.
because I think that's probably right. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting. Oh, the Celtics. We just okay. This is bad. So, oh, okay. What about like an Aaron Nesmith or a Peyton Pritchard? It's got to be one of those, maybe on the Celtics, right?
Pritchard potentially.
Pritchard. Okay, I'm gonna write
He's
these numbers
number
in here.
0, I believe.
Okay, so that's low. What about Nesmith? I think his number's pretty low too.
Is he? I'm trying to think when he got drafted.
I
He
know he
might
wasn't a
be.
freshman. I know he wasn't a
Yeah, he
freshman
might
because he
be
was one of
older
those
than
shooters. And
23, which would rule him out.
okay, so it could be Pritchard, could be Nesmith on the Celtics. Got it. Okay, and then lastly you have the Sixers. At this point, they've got to run out of Sixers because I feel like that. I've never looked this up, but I assume the Sixers have been picked the most other than the Suns.
Yeah, I
It's
think
been
Maxi has to have been done by now.
he has. I'm pretty sure it's been
I
him.
think he has.
I think it's been Tybalt. I think it's been
Right.
Shake Milton has been picked. It's been
Yeah.
they've had a bunch of dudes. I think they had Millsap when they still had him. I mean,
Korkmaz potentially.
I think Korkmaz was picked. Drummond was. Yeah, at this point they've
Yeah.
run through every single. All right, so Sixers are out. We're not
Yeah.
gonna unless we're forgetting some random like you know who's that guy from the Nets from really early on, David Duke or somebody stupid like that. I
Yeah.
think we're good. All right, so let's move on to another division. Let's just completely talk this out so we can get this in two or three. So the
Okay.
Nets, it could be Cam Thomas. The Celtics, it could be Pritchard or Neesmith. The Central is actually the division I have to think the hardest about because it's regionally it's hard division. But we do know it's Detroit, Indiana, Milwaukee,
Cleveland.
Chicago, Cleveland. Bingo.
Yeah, those are 5.
Who immediately is jumping out to you? Because I'm trying to think like Colin Sexton maybe, but wasn't he a little
I,
bit older out of Alabama?
I think he's older. My mind went to Cleveland immediately just because of the young talent they have. I think Okoro would be considered a
He
forward
would.
for this.
Yeah.
So
I think he's actually been picked too. Now that I think about it. Okay, so can we rule out Cleveland? I don't think we can because they're so young. Because there's got to be somebody we're forgetting.
Garland might be older than 23. I'm trying to remember.
No, he was a freshman. I'm pretty sure he was a freshman out of
He's one and
Vanderbilt.
done. Okay.
I think he was, yeah, because Vanderbilt doesn't get them often. I remember seeing that. So Garland actually might be a really good guess.
Okay.
Okay, let's
Pencil
go.
him in.
Yeah, Garland and for Cleveland. All right, let's go with. I don't think Indiana has a young guard unless it's somebody
Well,
like really bad that I'm thinking of.
Halliburton, but I don't know if he's young.
I think he
And,
was he was a sophomore out of Iowa State, so
I
he would
might
be
put him
right
right
at
at
the weird
24.
range.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what draft class was he? 2018, 2019? Yeah, he would be at 24,
I think
25.
19. Yeah.
He'd be getting really close. So I don't know, man. I hate to rule him out. He's so
I just
good.
don't think he's 22. There's no way he's 22. So that rules him
Or
out.
21 even too. That's the
Right.
other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be either one. All right, if you're confident on that, I'm going to mark Tyree. I'm going to mark Indiana out as a whole because every other guard is old. So
Brogdon.
Brogdon, yeah, sorry, 33-year-old Malcolm. No, I actually have no idea how old he is. So Chicago, Desumu's been picked already, so we can completely eliminate Desumu, and I'm pretty sure he
Okay.
was like a junior when he came out. So
Yeah, he
I
stayed at Illinois for a while.
I use out, which I think that makes Chicago out because I'm pretty sure every other card is Lonzo's
Yeah.
not. Yeah, Lonzo's out. And we're just thinking about the top tier guys. Obviously, if it's a bench player, we're going to get to the division and the team eventually. But I think we
Right.
can rule out Chicago entirely.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I also
So
think
that
we could roll out
leaves.
Milwaukee. That's where I'm struggling.
I
I
don't
think we
see them. Grayson Allen, maybe.
No, he was
He's
he was
old.
a
Yeah, he's
senior at
older.
Duke.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a senior at Duke. That's good thought though, because I don't think.
Trying to think a bit more obscure just in case.
Yeah, like maybe there's a point guard that they drafted. No, they didn't draft point guards recently.
I
I
don't
think
think
just a
they
bunch of
have. Yeah.
forwards. It's been like your Jordan Noirs of the world, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, Bucks tentatively a no, and then
So that
what's the
leaves
last two?
Detroit.
This is where I thought it was going to get weird because we know it's not
Yeah.
Cade. Cade's too young. Cade's out.
Right.
Corey Joseph's been picked before, and he's obviously way too old. He's out. I'm trying to
Hmm.
eliminate guards in my head.
Right. Jeremy Grant's a forward. Isaiah Stewart's a forward center.
I feel like we're missing a young guy on Detroit. That's why I wanted to
Yeah, I'm
talk
trying
this
to do
out.
process elimination just down the guys that I'm aware of actively.
Detroit point guard or shooting guard that's relatively young, relatively short. Has Cade had a
I,
backcourt mate at any point that's not old? I don't know. So far, I don't know. Oh goodness.
who do they get from Sacramento? He's definitely too old now. Bagley? There's no way.
Yeah, I think Bagley was the only piece in that trade.
Right.
Man. Okay. So realistically, maybe it's not them, but maybe they're kind of if it's Detroit, then we'll just figure that out based on this
Yeah.
next guess. Because Garland, out of the Central, Garland's the
Right.
only guess.
Yeah,
Cam
do we guess
Thomas is the
Garland
only
is rule out the
guess.
Central?
We could. And that's at that point, you're basically assuming it's Garland in that division, and we either get it in two on Garland, or we know it's the Central, and we have three guesses in the Atlantic. Excuse me. So
That's true too.
do we want to do Garland and then just assume the Central we're out on, or do we want to just swing for the fences with either Cam Thomas, Peyton Pritchard, or Aaron Nesmith? Because I think the finals too. It could be Pritchard. I really do think it might be. But no. Wait. I think he was old coming out, wasn't he? I think he was kind of older.
Out of Oregon?
I
I'm
think he was
trying
a
to
junior.
think.
I think he
Oh
might have been a
wow, then
junior
yeah. So he'd have been 21, 22. Yeah,
because
that's
he
a good
was
point.
he was the draft before Neesmith, wasn't he? Because they went back to
Yes.
back on
Yeah.
guards. So then it can't be Pritchard. Pritchard was
Yeah, because he'd be
19.
too old.
Was Pritchard 19 or 18? I think he was 18. Oh man, what draft was that? Because the Neesmith is what messed me up. Because Neesmith was supposed to be the best shooter in that draft, and I can always remember that for some reason. I don't. What draft was that though? Oh my gosh, I'm so mad at myself. Was Neesmith
Oh,
the Zion draft? I think he
I
was.
want to say he was.
So then it can't be Pritchard or it could be Neesmith and not Pritchard then. Assuming Pritchard was like a sophomore or a junior coming out of Oregon, because why would he have some crazy run with Oregon as a freshman of somebody I've never heard of? I'm pretty sure he was older. Pretty sure he was like
Right.
Chris Duarte kind of.
Think
Oh
so.
wait.
Oh yeah, that's
Oh, I'm so glad I
speaking
said that. Okay.
speaking of the devil.
Oh no. He's 24, 25. He was like Cam Johnson's age almost. We're
Is he?
good.
Okay, all right, good.
Crisis averted because we
Yeah,
look
that would have
both of us
been
light bulb went off when I said that. Oh gosh. Okay.
bad.
All right, so I think we have to go Garland based on how I would play this. Garland would
Yeah,
get
I agree.
completely the center out of the way unless we've completely goofed. And then
Right.
at that point, it's either Cam Thomas or Peyton Pritchard or Neesmith. I don't really know. All right,
Right. Yeah.
let's go with Darius Garland, and I hope this is right. Oh, no.
That's what I was
Oh,
afraid of.
that's what I was afraid of, too. Okay, so for those that obviously are listening and they can't see this, which is everyone, it is not Cleveland. We got the conference, like you said earlier. We've got the Central Division, as unfortunate as
Sadly.
this
Yeah.
is. I actually think this was a great guess, though, because
Got the age too. Yeah.
we got the age, we got the number below 10 without any
That's
yellow,
yep.
and I forgot Garland was really short. That actually wasn't a great guess from
I'm
the height.
surprised by 6'1", to be honest.
But it kind of gives us, okay, we know they're an average height guard. I guess that doesn't really. The number was really good, though. Recapping: East is green, Central's green, guard is green, and age is
Yep.
green. Unfortunately, means we know it's a central guard who is.
Yeah.
All right, so it would be not 6'2", not 6'3". Here's how I like to figure this out. So 6'7" would not be 6'6" and 6'5".
Right. So it's gonna be
Six.
6'4". What do
They
you
have
have?
to be all right. So
Yeah.
6'4", bingo. 6'4", number below 10, age 22 in the Central. We have to get this now.
This is yeah.
If we don't get this in 3, I'm going to be really mad. So Cleveland's out completely.
Right.
What we have left is Indiana, Chicago, Milwaukee, and Detroit. And I have a feeling it's going to be those darn Pistons. Oh no!
Yeah, I can't get
All
away
right,
from it either.
let's talk this out loud. It's not Chris Duarte.
No.
Tyrese Halliburton could be 22 because if you go to Iowa State at 18, 19, 20 would be your. It's got to be Tyrese Halliburton. He's 6'4", I
Yeah,
think.
that's the
No,
height range
see,
is right.
what's his number? I think he's like number 10. I think he's somewhere in that number.
Is
Oh
he
no!
10?
See,
I'm
this is
trying
the
to
part.
remember.
because he might have changed numbers when he left Sacramento. What was he in Sacramento? I can see the jersey on Twitter in my head of that Kings fan at the finals. I can see it.
I can't do. Did he switch though?
I don't know, but if we can get his Kings number, we might be able to get this right or wrong, which is where I'm trying.
I mean, I want to say single digits, but again, I'm not. I'm not very confident in that.
Well, Fox was 3. I'm seeing a single digit number in my head. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 11, maybe it's one of those. I don't know. Hmm. This is fun. This is tough. Okay.
Yeah, this is.
This is good. So I'm glad we did it this way because playing against each other would have been really kind of boring for a podcast. Okay, so we can't rule out India. Let's try to rule out more. Chicago,
Okay.
I think we can absolutely get rid of because Ayu's the youngest, or
Right.
Desumu, whatever, however you want to say it. Desumu's their youngest guard. Lonzo's 20 something now. Their way he's 22. I'd be
Oh
floored
yeah,
by that.
absolutely
Yeah.
not.
And then like I think they had a veteran of some kind on that roster. So that's outside of that. I'd be shocked if it was Chicago. I'll say,
Yeah,
unless you can think of anybody. I think I'm gonna officially rule out Chicago. I think that would be fair.
I'm good with that. Yeah.
Milwaukee again, unless there's just absolutely this young guy that I just can't think of, and I'm not trying to think too hard about the last 3 drafts. I don't think it's
No.
Milwaukee either because they've been in
Mm-mm.
title contention with older guys for a while. They've traded a lot of young
Right.
pieces. DiVincenzo would have been even a bad guess because he was old coming out of that out of Villanova. I almost said Archie Diacono, and then I'm like, there's no way he did the same thing, and he was before him, wasn't he? So
Yeah.
yeah, pretty sure. So worst case scenario just happened: Indiana and Detroit.
Yeah. This is.
I didn't watch many Pistons games. I'll be honest. I made my official public apology. I think it was post All Star break. So
Yeah, I really
yeah,
can't think of anything but Halliburton, to be honest.
yeah. I don't want to think too hard about this because it's got to be Tyrese Halliburton.
It just feels, yeah,
All right, official guest
going with it. Okay.
Tyrese Halliburton, and it's not. Wow. Okay, he was
He
six.
just,
I'm pretty sure he's six. I was pretty sure he might have been 6'5". I didn't say it, but I
if
was.
he
Ah,
just
I should have
didn't
said something.
lie about his height, he would have had that.
All right,
But we
so
got the jersey number. He's number
that's
0.
that's the part that made me mad.
So
So
that,
to recap, East green, Central green, guard green. We know he's 6'4". We knew that already.
yeah,
We got the age, and like he just said, 0. We've got the number.
we literally,
This
yeah, we
this
pretty
is
much everything
bad.
because we knew he was 6'4" based on the last guess. So they're just missing the team. I haven't studied my number zeros in the league lately, unfortunately.
And to be fair, Josh got this in 4, so I'm thinking he probably got Detroit because at this point I think it's Detroit and it's whoever the heck wears number 0 for Detroit that's young.
Right. And I don't know if I could, for $1 million, confidently answer that.
Yeah, if this was like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, we were
Number
screwed.
0. I'd be phoning all kinds of people. 0.
I'd be calling a Pistons front office member as fast as possible. This might be the only one to get this right. Is Dwayne Casey still there? I think he is. Is Dwayne Casey still there? I'm just trying to think maybe
Yeah.
something that would just give me a light bulb because I'd be so mad if we got this in 5. It'd be so annoying.
No, we
Even better
got
for content, but
the pressure's on with Josh getting in 4. We got to at
yeah.
least match that.
If I didn't know that, I wouldn't have kind of. I almost wish he hadn't have told us that. All right,
That's true too. That would take some pressure off.
all right. So I wish he would come in just for the last for
I'm
literally the
surprised he
last
didn't
5
pop back in
seconds.
yet, just like to laugh at us.
Yeah, yeah, right. He pops in, he goes, "We finish at 8," and he's like, "I got it
Right.
at 4,"
Yeah.
and then that's the end of the episode. Yeah. All right. So, all right, back to Detroit because at
All
this
right.
point, I
I'm
can't.
stuck on them too. I think that's yeah.
You know what's crazy is I forgot about Corey Joseph, and the reason I remember Corey Joseph's a Piston is because of Pirtle. So it's got to be a similar situation to the day that Corey Joseph was the player. I just can't think of who Detroit's players are. I'm really struggling, and we're not
It's
doing
not
silhouette. We
Luca
would have to
Garza. There's
guess.
no way. He's like
Oh
40 or
no,
50
it was his
something.
draft though. Yeah, I think it's his draft. Yeah,
But
yeah,
he was
yeah.
like a high number, I'm pretty sure. There's no
Yeah, he
way.
was. Yeah, no, but he was like in the teens of that, or in the late teens of the second.
Right, yeah, yeah. No,
Who
he's
was?
yeah.
They had a guard that draft. You're right. It's whoever the guard in that draft was.
Not Isaiah Livers, no.
Wait, I think it might be Isaiah Livers.
I was throwing like I'm trying to think like basketball card wise, like who do I pick? I'm like, oh, that's going to the trash.
I keep every rookie guard right now
Uh,
because you just never know in this market. I really do. Oh gosh. Okay, I'm gonna write down Isaiah Livers before we forget. First of all,
okay.
because it really might be. Okay, so is he? I don't know what his number is, but
I
He's
No,
a young short guard for Detroit. We
that's
do know
just the
that.
first name that popped in my head. Guard West. Yeah.
I'm gonna give it another minute, and if that's the only guess, then that's what we're
Okay.
gonna have to go with, and that'll tell us the mistake of Detroit or not. So I guess we'll spend the next 30 seconds, and I'll cut out whatever silence happens, figuring out who this could be. Oh
And he is a
gosh.
guard, right? I'm not
Yeah, I think he is.
misremembering
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
No, I think you're right. I think Isaiah Livers is a great pull because I have a couple of his rookie cards, but I can assure you today I would not have gotten that out
Just
loud.
trying to pull names from the ether right now, see if we can get one.
I used to guess Sadiq Bey for similar reasons for PJ Washington, but I think they sometimes list him at guard, and I think that would have helped us today. That would have been a great first guess. PJ's been good to me. Unfortunately, it wasn't
No,
great
that system
today.
that works well. I agree.
I mean, if it's the West, though, I mean, I got it one time. While we're thinking out loud, I got it one time when it was, I think it was Paul. I think Chris Paul was it a few weeks ago, or somebody like old in the West or something like that, or
Yeah.
Russ maybe, one of those older guards in the West. And I guessed PJ, and like everything was wrong. It was like West, wrong
Oh no.
division, old,
Yeah.
low number,
Shorter. Yeah.
shorter. Yeah, and I just went. I'm gonna meet in the middle somewhere. I'm gonna go really old, and I think I got it in
Right.
two or something. You've never gotten it in one before. I feel like you would have told me, right? I'm just gonna digress while I'm
No,
thinking.
there was a Thunder one I got in two. I'm trying to remember who it was. There's also a Thunder one it took me like seven to get. So
It was JRE. I
that's
remember.
exactly, yeah. It was Robinson Earl, and I was like,
'Cause I
there are
got
no
it.
more forwards on this team. And of
Yeah.
course, I missed
What's
the most recent
crazy?
edition.
It was. There's a YouTube video out there from KOT4Q. If you for those that have never heard of him, you can look it up. He actually did the same thing on that day, and I remember it hilariously because I got JRE pretty quick. I think I got it in five, but I watched his video after that day, and it was like every single player was like the same height, same age, same position for
Yeah, you sent me that
JRE.
too.
It
I
was
couldn't believe it. Yeah.
crazy. I was
I
like,
was
wow,
pulling
this
like
is kind of stupid.
Moses Brown, Isaiah Roby, everybody I could think of. It was
Everybody.
Poku, yeah, none of them.
Okay, so back to possibly Detroit. I think Isaiah Livers might be it. Yeah, I tweeted the day of. I didn't tweet afterwards in replying to that tweet what the one was I got, but I got the day it was Carmelo Anthony because
Oh, really?
I was just like it's Melo, and I went
Yeah.
and put it in, and I screamed. I was like, oh my god, it's Melo. Yeah,
Oh man,
I couldn't believe I got that.
that's good
Still,
stuff.
I've only gotten the NFL one a couple times because I just guessed Mac
That
Jones
one
over
gets
and
me
over
all the
again.
time. Yeah.
I just guessed Mac Jones until it was him because he was young quarterback. I figured it'd happen eventually. So, all right, I think we're gonna have to go with Isaiah Livers, and if not, we're gonna take the sale because at that point we're gonna figure it out
Okay.
pretty much. All right, Isaiah Livers for guess number four. Unfortunately, oh
Oh
no.
wow. Okay. Yeah, that's not great.
So they list him as a forward who's 6'6".
That's a choice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where's 12, not zero? That doesn't help. It's
Okay, so we've now
23, so I wasn't too
eliminated.
far off with that.
No, it was. I knew that was a good guess. I thought
Yeah.
he was. I thought he was right. Cleveland, Indiana, Detroit can be eliminated. So now, oh gosh, it's Detroit. It's Indiana and I'm sorry, not Indiana. It's Chicago and
Chicago or
Milwaukee. Milwaukee.
wait, Josh is gonna kill us.
Are we dumb? We have to
Yeah.
be.
I
Who is it? Say it.
think Bulls guard. We missed a young guy. There's no way he's 22 though.
Oh, I thought you knew it. You sounded so confident. I was like, oh, it's that guy.
I
Oh no.
just pulled another guard, Kobe White.
Oh my God, it's Kobe
There's no way
White.
he's
It,
22,
it's
right?
Kobe. Yeah,
You
he
think?
was. I think he was I think he was a sophomore.
I mean, at this point, why not?
It's Kobe White, and Josh is a Carolina fan.
Is it? Oh yeah, it is. Wow.
It is.
Oh my
My
god.
God.
So we're gonna edit this out
Yeah,
and not
right.
tell him. This will be our
Oh
second
God.
guess. I don't know what maybe I was like, there's gotta be. I started thinking about the benches from Milwaukee and Chicago.
Well, they drafted him, and then like 2 years later, they trade for Lonzo Ball, and they just kick
Right,
him to the
yeah.
curb because Desuma was a better
Right.
player. I
I
thought
was
Kobe
like,
White was
yeah.
going to be a great guard. I had him in that draft. Spoiler, because I didn't post these publicly back then. I had him sixth in that draft.
Yeah,
I had
that
it
was
very
not
high.
far off consensus either. So, I mean, yeah. I was just thinking bench guards, and I was like, it can't be Milwaukee, it's gotta be Chicago. And I was just thinking who's off that bench and Kobe White. And I was like 22, but apparently, yeah. So
Zero should have gave it away too. We should have thought the
yeah,
fact that and that showed you. Honestly, solo, it would have taken me as soon as I guessed like I would have guessed eventually like a Chicago player. I would have guessed Asumo, even though I knew he was.
right. I would have done it out of frustration. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay. To recap, Kobe White, Chicago Eastern Conference. I'm so mad. I don't even want to read this. Central Division guard who's 6'4", 22 years old, and unfortunately for us, the number zero. So
Guess number, don't worry about it.
yeah, guess number stupid. I'm so mad. All right. While we figure out to get Josh back here to close up the show, No, I'm kidding. Go ahead and get your shameless plug. You're going to get them 2 weeks in a row. So just whatever you want
Oh
to say
yeah.
next week, this week,
So
whatever. Shameless plug out of the way, and then we'll close it out.
yeah. So my plug debut. I've actually started a podcast with two of my college roommates of mine, the 1009 podcast. You can find us on Twitter at the 1009, the O being the letter O. We'll be more active on there in the future. We've been putting some episodes out. It's pretty rough around the edges right now, but we're hoping that as our audience grows, that our skills with this whole thing will grow as well. And I want to thank Trevor for having me on in relief of Josh, the Poeltl, and hopefully soon Trivia King again. It's been fun. Again, I was expecting to come on next week. I enjoyed draft chat. So the unexpected spot has been fun as well. So I appreciate you guys having me on again.
Yeah, I'm just glad, like Mark Jones, you were taking your dog to the vet. Next thing you know, you're apparently on a flight to Golden State. So,
Yep.
no, this has been a lot of fun. Once again, as weird as this sounds, I'll see you next week.
Yep. Same time.
This has been the Two Pointers Podcast. Don't forget to follow on Twitter at Two Pointers. Instagram is at Two Pointers Podcasts, and then Facebook.com/the Two Pointers Podcast, as well as that for TikTok. It's been a lot of fun. This has been the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor.
I'm Grayson, replacing Josh for now.
And we suck at Poeltl.